All right. Last time we learned that um, Mordechai. We're talking about Mordechai. And Mordechai, he was a great leader. He was a single person that inspired all the Jewish people. And Mordechai was, and it's something like the story over here with Yosef and Yehuda. Yosef and Yehuda. What did the Rebbe say before? Let's just go a little bit. The first couple of days. Now we're on the fourth day of the week. What have we been learning up to now? Moshiach. Moshiach is going to come from Yehuda, and this week's Torah portion seems to say the opposite. Yosef is the king, and Yehuda is coming and begging. Yehuda is a nobody. He's coming and begging for Yosef, please release Benjamin, please. So here, Yosef is the king, and Yehuda is below him. He's just another person in the world. And the Haftorah of this week, which is supposed to have the same message as the Torah portion, it says exactly the opposite. King David is going to be the highest, and he's going to rule over everybody. He's going to rule over everybody. So the Rebbe said, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an answer, how it can be. How it can be. How it can be that Yosef is the king and that King David is the king, and King David is going to be above Yosef, but here Yosef is above King David. So who's going to be higher, Yosef or King David? So the answer is right. Right what? What do you mean? Who's the highest? King David is the highest. So that answers, and Yosef is the highest. Doesn't come out. The Moshiach is going to come according from Yehuda, right? Yes. How and do we see in this week's Torah portion that Yehuda here demonstrated any sign of being the king? So the Rebbe said, I'll tell you why. He had chutzpah. He had defiance. He defied the whole world. He was a nobody. He was a nothing. Yosef was an everybody. He was an everything. Yosef was the king. And Yehuda, who was a nobody, defied him. He says, here, I'm going to give you an example. Mordechai. Next holiday is going to come up. It's going to be Purim. Mordechai lived in the time when there was a person, when Achashverosh was the king of the world. He was the king of the world. And Achashverosh gave all of his power over to this anti-Semite of the anti-Semites. I don't like the word anti-Semite because it doesn't ring properly. Because what's a Semite? Go to a town and say, where are the Semites? Nobody will know what you're talking about. A Jew hater. There was the arch Jew hater, right? The arch Jew. He said he was had the same soul as Bilam did. Anyway, so Haman decided that he was going to kill all the Jews, right? And Mordechai said, I'm not going to bow down to Haman. And Haman said, everyone's going to bow down to me. Everyone. And Mordechai said, not me. I'm not going to bow down to him. So the king, the Megillah of Purim opens up with the story that King Achashverosh made a big meal, and the meal was designed to please everybody. Everybody. So what does it mean? The Midrash says to please also Mordechai, who said, I'll never bow down to Haman, and Haman that said, everyone's going to bow down to me. How can you please both of them? Mordechai saying the Jews are God's chosen people and nothing will destroy them. And Haman saying, I'm going to destroy them. That's my whole goal, is to destroy the Jewish people. That's it. I'm going to destroy them all. So that's two opposites. How could they both be satisfied by Achashverosh? So there's two different opinions. One opinion of the Midrash said that Achashverosh was a fool and that it can't be done. And the other one is that, right, Achashverosh can't do it, but God can. How can God do both? How does that mean? So it says it comes out that this to do the will that everyone's going to be happy is stira minei obey. It's a contradiction in itself. It's a self-contradiction. Kishi Yehudi, when a Jew is found in the world, ubezeg gufa, in the time of exile, like it says, now we are servants of Achashverosh. B'sham yesh lo hagbalos, and he has all sorts of limitations about how he can be a Jew. That's like Haman. Haman is the exile, and Haman is ruling the world. When Haman is ruling, the Jews can't possibly be according to what Mordechai wants. Dina de Malchut Dina, it says the law of every country, that's the law. You have to go according to the laws of the country. Hagbalot minhag medina, the limitations and the customs of the country. Kishe'enu b'stira b'kiyum Torah mitzvahs. Of course, if they're not a contradiction to Torah and mitzvahs, you have to do them. But nevertheless, you're in France, you have to speak French. You're in Russia, you have to speak Russian, right? In France, you have to dress in a certain way. In Russian, a different way. There's different customs that people have, and if the customs don't oppose the Torah, so Jews have to go according to these customs. So if so, we are automatically under the rulership, at least to a certain degree, of Haman. Even now, Haman is the world. Azai then, lo yitachen, so it can't possibly be that you can be 100% Jew and also to be not a Jew. Mordechai says you have to be 100% Jew. And Haman, which is this world, is saying you have to be as little a Jew as possible, or maybe not at all. So how can these both be together? How can you do Ratzon Ish ve'ish? God, how can God even do both of them? Shari Ratzon Mordechai, the desire of Mordechai is that he won't bow down, that everything except for serving Hashem is considered to be avodah zarah. It's like idolatry. So let's even say, let's get even drastic. According to Mordechai, there's no place for Haman in the world. And according to Haman, there's no place for Mordechai in the world. So how can you please both of them? How can even God please both of them? According to Haman, you have to be totally under the world. Stop with this Judaism stuff. On the other hand, if we do really take into account the fact that God, Shalachat Bnei Israel, put the Jewish people into exile, so therefore we should say, listen, who made Haman boss? God did. God is the boss. God creates everything. If Haman is not there because the devil put him in there, Haman is there because God put him there. Therefore, so we have to at least take Haman into account. At least a little bit. So we can't be 100% Jews. I mean, come on, you have to be normal. Says Haman. And Mordechai says 100% Jews, that's what you have to be. How can there be both together? Nevertheless, this is a novelty. When you are attached to God, as God is above the world, that God is above time, He's above place, and the Jewish people are supposed to be connected to God, that's the Torah. Nevertheless, if you're really attached to God, therefore you can do two opposites. As you are found in the world, will be lo yichra v'lo yishtachave. You will not bow down to Haman at all. Kaven since nimtzaim legamri, you are above this. I think I told you the story yesterday. Every day I try to tell, with God's help, a story. Yesterday I told the story about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that he would, when he would walk on the streets, so he would say hello to non-Jews and he would tip his hat to even non-Jewish women, everything, but he would never bow his head. Never bow his head. He would say, to the Jews, he would say good morning. Right? And so somebody asked him why. He said, my father told me never to bow my head to, my father said, my father told me never to bow down my head to a non-Jew. Never to bend to a non-Jew. In other words, he was totally in the world and he said hello to everyone and he spoke to everyone. And he was interested in it. There was a very interesting one. They had these videos from Gem, and there was a black fellow. He had been the mayor of something or the area anyway. So he said that when he was young, he and his brother, they lived on the same street with the Rebbe. on a street called President Street. They lived on this, right? President Street? Anyway, so they lived, excuse me. So they lived on the same street, and sometimes they would argue. He and his brother, they would fight over a baseball or something. And the Rebbe would stop every day in front of them, and he would talk to them. Right? He would talk to them. Children, they're not Jewish. They're black. They're not the same race. They're not the same. The Rebbe, everyone was different. Everyone was unique. Every human being is unique, just because your skin is different. So you can see this person is a little bit different, but everybody essentially is as different from everybody else. So anyway, these people were definitely not in the Rebbe's congregation or anything. And the Rebbe stopped every day and he would talk to them. And when they were fighting, he said the Rebbe maybe it could be even every day. Anyway, the Rebbe gave both of them dollars. The Rebbe would give out dollars. And he said, this is to give to charity. And the Rebbe said to the brother, your brothers, you have to love one another. You two are brothers. Brothers have to love one another. So that entered deep into my heart. I took those words, but especially the care that somebody cared. Who cares about anybody else? You see two kids fighting, you're interested. You want to see who wins, who punches. The life is boring. You get a good boxing match, right? The Rebbe wasn't interested in that. The Rebbe was interested that there should be peace. There should be, like your brother, play baseball, right? Do good things, be harmonious. You'll get more out of life in that way, right? But that the whole idea is be in the world. You're in the world, and you're in the world according to the world, but only according to the Torah. So he says, this is how you can do both of these things together. He even says that God sent to put the Jewish people in the world, this and in the world itself, in exile, under the rulership of Achashverosh. This is the law of the Torah, the Dina, the Malchut Dina, that you have to go according to the laws of the country. As Efshar Lechiora, it is possible at first glance to think, like Haman, that in matters of the world, not in the matters of Torah and commandments, lo shayach, it's not relevant at one time that you can have two opposites. That was the beginning of the erosion of Judaism, the reform movement, the conservative movement, everything. There were these Jews, they were religious, the Jews, they had been religious and they knew Torah. And they said, listen, especially started in Germany. They were so enamored of German culture and German intellect, and this, they said you have to be a Jew in your house, but in the streets you have to be a man. Yehudi bebeitecha, v'adam b'tzeitecha. When you go on the streets, don't demonstrate anything Jewish whatsoever. In your house, there you keep kosher. In your house, there you act like a Jew. You can put on a kippah on your head, maybe tzitzis in your house. But when you're in the street, I say, and when you're in Rome, act like the Romans do. Said the Rebbe, that's what you might think. That's what you might think. That in the matters of the world, you cannot act like a Jew. So how can you, what is it called, the synthesize between the two? Very simple. When you're at home, act like a Jew. When you're in the street, act like Haman. What Haman wants. Says the Rebbe that the fact is, no, it's not so. The Yachadim said the fact that we are servants of Achashverosh in exile, to Etzlo, you can also do Lo Yikrav Lo Yishtachaveh. It's possible that there can be both of them, that you will be in the world, but you won't bow down to the world. Because if God sent the Jewish people into exile, Zotamer, it means that God wants us to be limited, at least a little bit in nature. We have to go according to the country. We can't be 100% Jews all the time. That's what you might think. But if we're not in exile, then we can do like Mordechai. Then we don't have to have any connection to the world at all. Says the Rebbe, but regarding doing the commandments that it says in the Shulchan Aruch, and the moving Pasha, then it's obvious. Says the Rebbe, let's start off like this. This idea to be a Jew in your house and a man in the streets, you might think that you should, like the originator of this idea, I think that the originator of this idea was like Mendelssohn or somebody like that. Moses Mendelssohn, I think he was the one that started this idea. But in any case, said, you can understand this is a big mistake. This is a big mistake. Even in the time of exile, a Jew can never compromise on what it says in the Torah, what it says in the Shulchan Aruch. You can never eat not kosher food. You have to have tzitzis on your garment all the time, even in the time of exile. Maybe you can hide the tzitzis, but you have to have tzitzis on your garment. But a Jew might think, okay, Torah and commandments and the Shulchan Aruch and religious stuff, I'm not going to compromise at all. But when it comes to things of the world and being in the world, how can it possibly be that I'm going to, excuse me, how can it possibly be that I'll act according to Haman, namely according to nature, according to what the world says, and also, Ari lo Ari who over mitzvot melech. If you don't do what Haman says, you're going against what the king says. But you have to do what Haman said. So the Rebbe says, okay, a person can think like this. You got to be a religious Jew. But how are you going to be a religious Jew? Live in a town where everybody is religious Jews and close yourself in. Then you won't have any temptations. But if you're going to be in temptations to maybe act like the non-Jews, but if you live among the non-Jews, it's impossible to keep Torah and mitzvahs in normal things. In normal things. Now, we're not talking about the commandments. The commandments, of course, you're going to do. But acting like the non-Jew, right? Thinking like the non-Jew, treating life like the non-Jew, of course you're going to do it. Of course you're going to do it. That's obvious, says the Rebbe. Oh, yeah? That's what you think. Omer Midrash, the Midrash says, Shebamed, what are we talking about? When is there a contradiction between acting like Haman and acting like Mordechai, if we're talking about being in the world? But if you look at the world from God's point of view, how the world, God is above nature, then then you are able to carry out both things. A Jew can be in the world and in exile. We are servants of Achashverosh, and together with this, you can be totally above everything in the world and the exile. Lo yichra v'lo yishtachaveh. Until Shu Poel, he brings about also even the king of the even Achashverosh agrees with him. Maybe I can give you a little example of this, and the Rebbe brought about this especially scientists. There were a lot of scientists that were, expert. One of them was Professor Green, was a famous, of blessed memory, a famous one. And even some of them were non-religious. They were non-religious. Professor Green, he was like a professor in, what is it, anyway, like in biology, something like that. In environment and environmental, he eventually worked for NASA and everything like that. In Minnesota. Minnesota is a very, very, how do you call it, atheistic place, Minnesota. And he was like a professor in one of the universities over there. But he heard about the Rebbe, and he came to, there was a shliach over there, a rabbi, a fellow, that he should be healthy and wonderful man. And he brought this Professor Green to the Rebbe, and he fell in love with him. That's it. He fell in love with him. And Professor Green became an example of a totally scientific man, living in the regular, normal, mundane world, and he was totally a religious Jew. I mean, one thing that helped is he had a good sense of humor also. And he was also, but the idea is that when you're human and you put godliness into your humanity, then you can treat everyone in the world according to their nature, and you can also express your nature. You're not afraid. The world does not intimidate you because the world becomes a friendly place. And anything that does intimidate you, you just start looking at the world from, what would God say in this case? What would God want me to do? And if you don't know what God wants, what would the Lubavitcher Rebbe want me to do? If you look at the world from the Lubavitcher Rebbe's point of view, then it is totally possible, and not only possible, but it is productive to be a totally observant religious Jew, in the physical, mundane world. And things that are forbidden, you simply abstain. So things that are so you abstain from bad thoughts, from that. That's what it means in what it says in the Gemara, Lasot keratzon ish v'ish, to do the will of each and every person, to do what Mordechai said, and Haman. Haman represents the world. Mordechai represents godliness, Torah. It's possible to do both of them. The Torah does not say it's impossible, because Al Yedei Zeh, by means of this, that Mordechai stands completely, so totally surrendered to God, and God is creating the world, and God is also putting the Torah in the world. So you know that if you're in a situation in the world, that God put you there in order to make a decision according to the Torah. Lo yichra v'lo yishtachaveh. Don't bow down to the world. Kofar b'avodah zorah. He how do you say, defies idolatry, which idolatry means strange service. Harizek kishuroto. This attaches him with the power of God, which is above the world. How did this whole business, this whole quagmire that we're in, which is called exile, because Adam was in the world and the world overpowered him. God said, don't eat from the tree. And he looked at the tree and the tree was good. And the tree seemed to be wonderful. And his wife said, I ate from it. I didn't die. Right? I didn't die. I'm doing okay. You know, the snake told me that. So Adam ate from it. It was too much pressure from the world, peer pressure. There was only one person in the world, only his wife, and he couldn't take it, right? He couldn't take it. He couldn't take the pressure of the world. He wanted to be normal. He wanted to make everybody happy. Come on, make the world happy. So he ate from the tree. There's thousands of explanations of why Adam ate from the tree. But in general, that's the explanation. That he misinterpreted God's relationship with the world and with man. God put us in the world will give us challenges, and God empowers us to transform these challenges into blessings. But if you don't do so, then the world becomes Haman's world. The world overpowers the Jew, and that's what Haman wanted, to kill Judaism as much as possible, or even as little as possible, just a little bit. What's the antidote? To look at the world from God's point of view. How do you know what God's point of view is? That was Mordechai. Mordechai was the example of God's point of view in the world. That's what God gave over to every single Jew. So even when a Jew is found in exile, Yeshlo Berera, he has the free choice, Lidnaheg, to conduct himself. Kiritzon ish v'ish, that he can go according, he can also personify Haman and Mordechai. Mordechai, that he believes in God. Haman, that he's not afraid of the world. He's not afraid of the world. He includes Haman in the picture. Shehu Omer Betokef, he can stand powerfully, defiance, like Yehuda did. Rak lefkefi amuchrach, as much as is necessary to do the Torah and the commandments. actually, but everything else, he feels that he is under the laws of nature. That's avodah zorah. Oh, he has a choice. Either he can give into the world a little bit, or Mordechai. Oh, he can do like Mordechai. That in everything, even in the most mundane things in the world, he stands above the world and above exile. Because he's attached to God. Therefore, he will not bow down and he will not prostrate himself to anything in the world which is not connected to serving God. It does not depend only in his will. It depends on your will. The world can never force you to deny even a little bit your Judaism. But you have to be brave. And you also have to know what a Jew is. You have to know what a Jew is, at least a little bit. And this, there's a difference between the generations. Shibirova Doros and the generations, the majority of generations, like in the Kama Hagbolos, there's a lot of limitations from outside. There's decrees of the king. Shalo Ifsha that did not allow Jews that is able to stand completely above exile. A lot of the generations, I mean, in Europe especially, the anti-Semitism was so strong, so dominant, so taken for granted. Jews are just second-class citizens. Once in a while you can use a Jew for something. You can allow Jews. The Jews were forbidden. One of the reasons that Jews went into banking and things like that, because they didn't let Jews go into any other, and they didn't want Jews to be competition in any normal type of work, right? Christianity had this strange outlook on money lending and taking lending, so they interpreted that only Jews could do it. And that's why they began with, because the Jews weren't allowed anywhere to do anything else. But nevertheless, those weren't all the other generations, right? A Jew walked down the street, if he had a yarmulke on his head, they would beat him up. It was just Jews were just open game. That's the way it was in all the European countries. Now they're all eating it over there, the European countries. They let all the Arabs in, and the Arabs they're teaching them all the lesson. But again, there are places where I never experienced this personally. I never did. But I have a lot of friends, a lot of acquaintances in England. And they said that, you would go down the streets, people would yell it from the windows. Even now, they would yell from the windows, "You dirty Jew, hey, Jews, go back to Israel, go back to some." Non-Jew, we're not talking about Arabs. We're not talking about Arabs. Now it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. But the Arabs, they say they hate everybody. In previous generations, it was impossible for a Jew to go above the world. Somebody once said to the Rebbe, they said the reason that the Jews are hated is because of this. The reason the Jews, and the Rebbe said, "Listen, I'm from Russia. I was born in Russia, and I know that the non-Jews do not have to have any reason to hate the Jews. They do not have to have any reason whatsoever. A pogrom all of a sudden would pop up nowhere, right? But pop up all of a sudden from nowhere. And the communists also, they would hate a Jew, no problem. To close a synagogue, to put Jews in prison, no problem. Which is not the case in our generations. This is dependent only on the will of a Jew. It all depends on our will. Al pizeh, according to this, now will be understood what is Yehuda. Like this week's Torah portion, in regarding Yosef, even though that Yosef at Tzaddik, he ruled over the whole world. Shazam, more this indicates the fact that a Jew Yosef was a Jew, that a Jew really is the owner. He is, how do you say, the owner of the house. He's the owner of the whole world. And also on the non-Jews around him, like Yosef. Hari, behold, Yosef was put there by means of Paro, the king of Egypt. Namely, this is the king himself said that Yosef has to be the ruler. And in a way that after Yosef was appointed, Paro said, the only one greater than you is me. If I want to step in, I can step in. But except for that, you have a free hand to do anything that you want to. Shazam Maro, this indicates that Yosef still was a little bit connected to the king. But Yosef was the king, but he was still a little bit connected to the world. Comes Yehuda. Yehuda was not connected to the world at all. But Yigash, I love Yehuda, he expressed in this that when he came to Yosef, he didn't have permission. He didn't have permission to approach Yosef first. The Pololov, and he brought about on Yosef, Lo Yichal Yosef litapek, that Yosef was not able to hold back. He saw the courage of his brother Yehuda, he was willing to give his life for Benjamin to oppose the king of the whole world. Yosef, he couldn't hold back. She started to cry. Shazam Mara, this shows on the power that Yehuda did not consider, he did not reckon at all with how the world worked. Namely, this is showing a joining of two opposites, Ratzon Ish V'ish. Yehuda demonstrated that together with the fact that Yehuda knew that he needed Yosef in order to free Benjamin. He had to convince Yosef. He said, Yehuda said to Yosef, you are like Paro, you are like the king. I am depending on you. Therefore, it had the power of Yosef that he could fulfill the will, the desire, the request of Yehuda. Yehuda also negated the fact that Yosef would send him to Paro, and said Yosef could say, "Listen, I can't free Benjamin. You have to go to Paro." Yehuda said, "No, you are like Paro. You're the king." So you could think if Yehuda knew that Yosef was the king, so he should have been a little bit afraid of him, huh? Like Yosef, he ruled over the whole world, but still he was only number two. Yosef knew that that Paro said, "You're the ruling the whole world, but the fact is, I'm higher than you." By Yehuda said, "You, Yosef, you're ruling the whole world. You're like Paro, and I'm higher than you." Yehuda put the whole entire world in his pocket. Ke'ilu eina zakuk, he doesn't need Yosef at all, but Yigash love Yehuda. So therefore, we see that Yehuda demonstrated a power which was totally above the world, even above Paro. Lochen, therefore, Davka Acharei, after Vayigash love Yehuda, that Yehuda came close to Yosef, and then Yosef gave him the power. Sheyeh Yosef Vayeshev Yisrael be'eretz Mitzrayim be'eretz Goshen. Then that changed the whole entire scene. Then the Jews became the bosses of Egypt. They got the best part of Egypt. Meitav ha'oretz, the best part. Afal pi, even though that they're found in Egypt and they're in like exile, mates are limitations and boundaries, and they're under the kingship of Paro. But nevertheless, it's made by Yeshiv Yisrael that nevertheless made it that the Jewish people, they dwelled there as though they were the bosses in a way of Yeshiv Emitit, a true a true dwelling. They even took possession of it. They received there a chuzah, a temporary, a permanent land, a permanent possession. Achuzah means a permanent. Ubofen shel achiza, they grabbed onto it, they took onto it. That this showed on the token of the power that they became the owners of their little portion in the world in exile. Until it says vayifru v'yir b'mod, they were fruitful and they multiplied very much in a way which is totally above nature. There were only 70 Jews, and in the short amount of time of 200 years, they became like million. There was at least 15 million Jews. That brought afterwards Yaakov, that Yaakov lived in the land of Egypt 17 years, and in Egypt there was the best years of his life. This is showing us how we can be in the exile until Moshiach comes and frees us totally, but we can be as though Moshiach is already here in the exile. How? Defiance. We have to have the defiance of Yehuda. Don't be afraid of anything except for God. That was the message of the Baal Shem Tov. As we'll continue learning, warm up tomorrow. Let us now stop the share.